In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. I have a little bit of work to do this morning. I have to introduce myself to you, first of all. I'm Brian Coleman. I'm currently, until the end of June, the rector of St. Thomas Church in Battle Creek. I have had to step away from full-time ministry because of a paralyzed vocal cord, which makes it really too demanding, too challenging for me to function on a full-time basis. So I moved up here to Manistee to be quiet, to live a quiet life. My husband just got a job at West Shore Community College where he's teaching psychology. We just bought a house on Cox Farm Road, and we're up to our necks in painting and fixing things up there. But it's lovely to be with you, and it's lovely to celebrate the resurrection with you this morning. I don't mean to brag, but I have seen an angel. I was preparing for my ordination to the priesthood. And traditionally, before one is ordained, you go on a retreat. And I went on a retreat to a monastery. This was in Los Angeles, where I grew up for most of my life. And while I was there, I was walking through the monastery garden one afternoon, and I came upon a young woman sitting on a garden bench, and she was praying, and I sat down beside her, and we started a conversation, and I came to find out that she was also on retreat. She was preparing to be married. She was going to be married the following weekend, and I was going to be ordained to the priesthood the following weekend. So we were both about to take a big step in our lives. We were both about to make a big commitment for the rest of our lives. And we sat there and reflected together about the gravity of the decision that we were about to take. While we were there, a woman came along the garden path and introduced herself to us. She said that she wondered what we were doing there, and we explained that we were preparing for these momentous vows that we were going to take. She for her marriage vows, and me for my ordination vows. And that we were a bit trepidatious about taking this step. And the woman said, "But how wonderful. How wonderful that you have the rest of your lives to figure out what it means to be married or to be ordained to the priesthood." She said, "You don't have to understand everything from the get-go. You have the luxury of time to figure out how to be, in her case, a wife, and in my case, a priest." Then the woman walked away, and we never saw her again. We went into the guest master's quarters and said, "Who is this woman that gave us such a beautiful, comforting message and such wisdom?" He had no idea who she was. There was no record of her being a guest at the monastery, and it's not like someone could just stumble upon this garden. It was all enclosed and secure. So I had a visit and a conversation with an angel. And the angel said to me essentially the same thing that the angel said to the women at the tomb. Don't be afraid. be afraid because you have time. You have the rest of your life to figure out how to be what God is calling you to be. You have that luxury because you're making a commitment. You're giving your life over to this vocation. And so let it unfold and let it teach you how to be the priest that you're called to be. That's true for all of us. In whatever walk of life we may find ourselves, whatever our vocation is, we have time, we have the ability to open ourselves up to the will of God for us and for what we're called to do and be. Easter begins today, right? It's not over today, though, is it? Easter is a 50-day celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. 50 days. How long is Lent? 40 days. So Easter trumps Lent. And we spend more time celebrating the resurrection than we do observing the preparation and the penitential season of Lent. We have the luxury of time to let Easter unfold, to let the mystery of the resurrection reveal itself to us, to give ourselves over to that wonderful, sacred, and fathomless truth of Christ's victory over death. Just like me at that monastery retreat, just like the woman who was about to get married, the women at the tomb had no idea what was in store for them. They had no idea what was going on, even though Jesus had told them, hadn't he, and his disciples, pretty much exactly what was going to take place before it happened. But still they seemed completely baffled at the message of the angel. They had no idea what participating in the resurrection of Jesus would mean for them or for their community. Now, when someone comes up to you and says, "Don't be afraid," what's your first reaction? Be afraid. Be very afraid. It's not an invitation to relax, is it? It's not an invitation to let go. When someone says, "Don't be afraid," it isn't the same thing as "there's nothing to fear." There's a difference between those two things. Don't be afraid doesn't mean that there's nothing to fear. It means that you don't have to fear that which you might normally be fearful of because you have confidence in the power of God in Christ. Because you give yourself over to a power that is greater than you and greater than any other force in the universe. At that monastery where I prepared for my ordination vows, the monks take vows themselves. Traditionally, the Benedictine vows are stability, obedience, and conversion. Now, you might have heard poverty, chastity, and obedience. That's the monastic vows that everyone sort of is familiar with. But those are Franciscan vows. Benedictine vows are stability, obedience, and conversion. And to me, I interpret those vows to mean stability. Give yourself completely over to what it is you're called to do. Be constant. Bloom, my mother would say, bloom where you're planted. Put roots. Wherever you are, put roots. And look for God around you. look for the opportunities that God presents to you where you are to be his light, to be his truth. Obedience just means that I'm not the boss. I'm not the boss of me. I'm accountable to God. I'm accountable to other people in my community, my neighbors, my friends, my family. And it means that I commit to that accountability and to that relationship. That I can't just say, well, I'm mad at you, so I'm done with you. That's not how obedience works. We submit to each other in love. And we trust each other for our growth. It's a truth that I've come to learn. That God's will for your life is in the heart of someone else. You can't know what God has in store for you outside of being in relationship with other people. God's will for your life is in the heart of someone else. So you need to be open to the relationships that are available and submit to that, be obedient to that sense of accountability. And transformation is the most joyful vow. Conversion. The sense of wonder and amazement that I feel when I stand at the font or the altar or the grave, the thresholds of new life, makes the resurrection such a fearful and joyful experience. Read that gospel lesson again. The women departed the tomb fearful and joyful together. Those two emotions together. Being open to conversion, being open to being changed by God, calls us to new life, to something wholly unexpected and maybe even strange. Certainly uncomfortable from time to time, unpredictable and out of control, out of our control. We open ourselves up to the reality, the joyful reality, that we don't have to be the same people that we've always been. God has something better, far better, in mind for us. I think there's sort of three ways of looking at life. People who say those were the days. People who say this is as good as it gets. And people who say the best is yet to come. The resurrection, the feast that we celebrate today, boldly proclaims the best is yet to come. Amen.